What is up, beautiful people? My name is Bobby Rollin. Today we are going to be talking about high altitude operations. We're going to be going over the basics of what you need to know for your private, instrument, and commercial. What are your legal obligations, and what are some best practices for you to follow during your flying career? So your legal requirements fall under 14 CFR 91.211. These are our altitudes at which we are required to use supplemental oxygen. So let's start from the top. At 12,500 feet MSL to 14,000 feet MSL, you are required to use supplemental oxygen if you are at these altitudes for more than 30 minutes. All crew members must have oxygen. If you are at 14,000 feet MSL and above, required crew must have oxygen at all times. And 15,000 feet MSL and above, each occupant of the aircraft must be offered supplemental oxygen. So if you get to the point of 15,000 feet, all your crew must have supplemental oxygen, and it must be offered to any passengers that you have. The FAA recommends that at 10,000 feet MSL, you use supplemental oxygen, and at 6,000 feet MSL, use supplemental oxygen if you're flying at night. The other legal requirement you have is if you are using a pressurized aircraft, you must have a high altitude endorsement. So just be aware of that if you're planning on flying a pressurized aircraft. All right, next, let's talk about our biggest hazard at high altitude flying, and that is hypoxia. So hypoxia, in its simplest definition, is your body's not getting enough oxygen. Some of the symptoms of hypoxia include headache, confusion, rapid heart rate, difficulty breathing, anxiety, and if you're experiencing severe hypoxia, you might have a slower heart rate, extreme restlessness, and start seeing blue skin. You need to be aware of your hypoxia symptoms, so when you feel them coming on, you get to a lower altitude immediately and land as soon as safe. So what are the different types of hypoxia? The most common type of hypoxia is known as hypoxic hypoxia. This is hypoxia you get when there's not enough oxygen around you. Your body's just huffing and you're not getting enough. That is the most common kind. So that's, if you think you're experiencing hypoxic hypoxia, again, get to a lower altitude, get some supplemental oxygen in you. Next is hypemic hypoxia. So this is the reduced ability of blood to carry oxygen, and it's usually caused by carbon poisoning. So you can get CO2 poisoning if you have like a crack in your engine and all that carbon is just shooting into your cabin. It's really important that you are aware of the symptoms. The symptoms are kind of similar to hypoxia, except it'll feel like you're going to throw up because it's literally carbon poisoning. It's similar to the carbon poisoning you would experience if you were to turn on your car engine in a closed garage. Next is histotoxic hypoxia. This is hypoxia you experience most commonly either under the influence of alcohol or inebriated in some way, high, whatever the case may be. Basically, your cells can't take in any more oxygen because they're intoxicated. And so as you fly to a higher altitude, you're going to experience the symptoms of hypoxia. This is super important to know what histotoxic hypoxia and understand this is why we have our 8 hours bottled to throttle, our 0.04, but then also why we don't take up any passengers who are inebriated in any way because they could experience hypoxia. Next is stagnant hypoxia. So this is hypoxia caused by decreased blood flow. What's the most common way you will experience this? Where I live in Minnesota, it's in the wintertime when it gets cold. Your body is focused on warming itself. It's not pumping enough oxygen, enough blood to the other parts of your body, thus inducing hypoxia. Another way you could get this is if you're experiencing high amounts of G-force. We talked about this in our last video covering night operations, but at nighttime, your eyes use a lot more oxygen. And so you can experience hypoxia at a lower altitude at night because of that. That's why the FAA recommends using supplemental oxygen at 6,000 feet MSL versus 10,000 feet MSL during the day. All right, let's talk about time of useful consciousness. Below 20,000 feet MSL, you get 30 minutes or more. As you get higher than 20,000 feet MSL, it goes down way less. 22,000 feet MSL, 5 to 10 minutes. 25,000 feet MSL, 3 to 5 minutes. 28, 2.5 to 3, so on and so forth. If you're flying at these altitudes, you know better to have supplemental oxygen. You're able to identify your symptoms and get to a lower altitude quickly when this happens. So let's talk about some high altitude equipment you could use. When you're using supplemental oxygen, there's different ways of receiving it. The most important thing is that you have it and that you're using aviation grade oxygen. There are different kinds of oxygen. Sometimes there's 100% oxygen that you can buy at the store. we're not using that. We're using aviation grade oxygen. So when you're checking your oxygen tanks, make sure it's aviation grade. It's not 100% oxygen. It's not medical grade oxygen. It has to be aviation grade oxygen. Most common tool that I've seen people use for high altitude flying is this cannula with green flow detector. It's this nose tool. So basically how it works is you connect these tubes to your oxygen, and then using these two nozzles right here, the oxygen is fed directly into your nose. That's the most common one I've seen, along with a pulse oximeter. So you use the cannula flow in order to get the oxygen to your body, and then in order to monitor, you use the pulse oximeter. So the pulse oximeter, similar to the thing that you use at the hospital when you go to get checked in. It's a device, you put it on your finger. While you're at cruise at a high altitude, it tells you your oxygen percentage and your heart rate. It gives you good, useful information. You want to have this tool, so if you do have a leak, you're not getting enough oxygen for whatever reason, you're able to monitor it and see your oxygen percentage go down. The other tool is a continuous flow mask and rebreather bag. This is also common. I just see the flow detector more, probably because it's more comfortable to wear than this giant mask. So that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave it down below. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe.